I'm about to show you something in n8n that changed how I build workflows, and it's way simpler than it sounds. Today's video will focus on the one feature in n8n that will change how you think about workflows, turning complex workflows into smaller, modular solutions that work consistently. In the next 5 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how to set up workflows so you can implement them immediately, and I'm also going to show you 3 use cases that I have found them to be super useful. My name is Alejo from Amplify Voice, and I've been in the AI world for about 7 years. And today I'm sharing one of my favorite features that completely changed how I think about building workflows. Subworkflows are workflows in themselves that can be called by other workflows. And the best way to understand them is with a few examples. So let me show you how I actually discovered them and how I discovered their usefulness. This is a workflow that started out simple, but then started getting very complicated. This workflow processes all of our Firefly's transcripts. And I'm going to run it so you can see it in action. So it starts over here, and it essentially lists all of the transcripts that we have in Fireflies, but only a few at a time. Then we have to parse those transcripts and extract all the information from them, like what was said, but also who was speaking, when the meeting happened, what was the title of the meeting. And all of that stuff starts generating a lot of items in this workflow with a lot of data. And what was happening is to see how long it takes just to get 10 transcripts. So what was happening is that as data was getting processed and the workflow was looping, you can see my computer getting slow right now. I shut down the workflow and it's not shutting down because there's so much data happening. And then it goes into the next loop. But we don't have 10 meetings. We have about 1,000. And what this results in is in your n8n crashing. If we're lucky, you're going to see this n8n instance actually crashing live, which would be really interesting so I can actually make my point. So the data is going through. I think now it's stuck and this might actually crash. So how do we prevent this? We prevent this with a sub workflow. Let's say we do want to process all this data, but instead of giving it all at once and all in one big loop that has to process thousands of items, we divide them up in little chunks that can get processed before moving on to the next one. And very importantly, prevents our n8n instance from crashing. So this is the result of that. We have 2 workflows, one on top and one on the bottom. This top loop, what it's doing is processing one batch at a time. So it processes 10 transcripts and then waits till it's done and then processes the next batch. So you're going to see that happen right now. This is going to finish. This takes about 10 seconds. And what is happening? What is this thing that is running? Well, it's actually this workflow down here. So I'm going to show you that bottom one running. See how it went through the loop and now it has the second item, 10 more transcripts, and then it's going to keep going. I'm going to pause it so I can show you the bottom loop running. And what that looks like is the same thing. Get the transcripts, get the metadata, do your thing, and then upload them to our database. And then it'll finish. So there's no crashing because it's just only a few items. It's only a small chunk of data that finishes. And very importantly for you programmers, what's happening in n8n is the memory gets cleaned up, so there's no possibility of your instance crashing. There could be a possibility if we don't let this finish, which is an option that you have. So let me show you how to set this up for yourself. A execute sub workflow node, all it does is it chooses a workflow to execute. This is the current one that we're seeing right now. And we say run once with all items or run once for each item. That's up to you. And then finally, there's a toggle for wait for sub workflow completion. If you don't have this toggled, you still run the risk that your n8n instance is going to manage too much data and crash. So we have this on. So one batch gets completed before moving on to the next one. And instead of what we were doing before, which was crazy and having to restart an n8n instance, it took hours to process about 1,000 transcripts. Now in 10 minutes, they're all processed. And that is the amazing use case number 1, which is when it comes to loops, you might want to look into using sub workflows to make everything more efficient and more modular. And before we move on to the next use case, I want to show you what this receiving node is, which is the when execute by another workflow, which is a trigger, meaning this is the start of a workflow. You can see that in the little orange lightning on the left of the node. So that is a trigger. So we're triggering from this workflow, we're triggering this workflow. And what you see inside is what type of data do you want to accept? You can define it. You can say only accept this type of data and it has to look this way, or you can just accept all data. In this case, we're only calling this workflow from one other workflow, so we're good there. Sometimes you'll want to specify what type of data it can receive and only that type of data. Now let's move on to the next use case. The second use case that I have found subworkflows to be super useful in is when it comes to AI agent tools. What do I mean? There are some very, very useful tools that allow you to do crazy things with AI agents. For example, checking vector stores, which is a very advanced use case for RAG for AI agents. Okay, so let's say we're checking our documents like the transcripts I was just talking about. And as I was building this internal knowledge agent that has access to all our meetings, what I found was that this module is actually very limited. This tool for vector store search is very limited. And this is an issue that we have found with Supabase, with Pinecone. So what is the issue? That when I search for all these meetings, there's 1,000 meetings that are chunked into like 6,000 different chunks. So I want to filter them. And there is a metadata filter option, but this is static. You can't have the AI agent decide what should go in here, which is actually a catastrophic mistake in my opinion, but there's a way around it. When you do metadata filtering, when you ask the AI, hey, could you check our meetings for the past week? What you're saying is if the check all the meetings that are less than 7 days old. So this should be a dynamic variable, which is creation date of the meeting. But you can't make it variable. It has to be static. You have to make this value somewhere else before in the workflow or make it static. How do we solve this? We solve this with a sub workflow. So instead of giving the agent this tool that is pretty limited, what we would do is create a sub workflow that gets called by the agent and then can send all the data. For example, creation date should be less than 7 days. So let's look into this bigger node that says the same thing, Supabase vector store, and actually looks the exact same inside. But we can actually pass things as variables. And we can actually even put a prompt in, which the AI would put the prompt, which is actually a search query to search the meeting, search the vector store. So although this looks the exact same, we're actually going to be passing some values to this when executed by another workflow. And we're going to give the AI agent the tool, the capability of calling another workflow, this execute sub workflow. So we choose the workflow. In this case, we're calling it tutorial sub workflows, which is this right here. And then this is going to get executed. Whatever meetings get found in here are going to get passed back to the main AI agent. What is important about this flow and giving the AI agent this tool is that the agent can say, hey, actually, I didn't find what I was looking for. Let me try something else. Let me try a different query or prompt. Let me try different filters. So what that looks like is I'm gonna run this big workflow. The details are not important. What it's going to do is activate this search transcripts tool. And what's gonna get activated is actually up here. The same setup is gonna search the vector store, and I gave it some other filters like the meeting title, who was speaking, keywords. And if I go to my executions, what you'll see is this is running, which is what I manually ran, but then this is running also, which is that sub workflow. So they're running multiple times because my AI agent is doing multiple searches. One of the searches, for example, looks for meeting title was empty, no specific meeting title, but it's looking for speakers Alejo, and it's looking for VAPI details, let's say. And now what I'm adding, because Supabase has some limited features like searching for date, what I'm adding is a filter at the end of the workflow to only search the times that I'm interested in. For example, if I say last week, then it would search creation date before today and after 7 days ago. So this takes care of that. The important part of all this is not the details of what I'm filtering, is that you can see that I'm not only doing one thing in the sub workflow. I was going to, but then I got the possibility of doing more things in that sub workflow. And that final node, that gets passed back to my AI agent, and we can look at that result. So I'm gonna go to that run. I'm gonna go to my AI agent. So let's look at this AI agent, and you can see that it ran the search transcripts tool 6 times. So in 6 different times, 6 different types of queries to look for the question that I had asked, which was about comparing VAPI and retail and such. And it pulls up all the meeting details, all that stuff. And then the AI agent can actually process all that information, decide, do I need to keep searching, or is this good enough to provide an answer? And this is another place that subworkflows has become super useful. And use case number 3 is what we call reusable workflows. The first use case I showed you was going through a loop and processing our old meetings 10 at a time. But what if we want to have that? Great, wonderful, this works. But also process all our current meetings as they happen in real time, one by one. So today I have a meeting, and at the end of the meeting, this can go through. So we've set that up, receive Firefly's transcripts, and now we can execute that bottom workflow as they happen in real time, set them up the right way, do the metadata, all that stuff, set up the text such that we can put it in the vector store, and our AI internal knowledge AI agent called Knowledge Now will have access to those meetings right after the meeting ends. So that reusable workflows now is not only for our old meetings, but also for our new meetings. And both of these execute subworkflow are calling this same workflow. And that can be super powerful because it's not just 2 use cases. What else can we come up with that might use this subworkflow as well? For example, you want to make an outbound call and you just want to make sure that the number that your voice agent is calling from matches the area code of the user that it's calling to. And that's not something you would want to have only in one workflow. You would want to have that in many workflows. So instead of repeating the same modules over and over again across workflows, you just have a single execute subworkflow, and the subworkflow will run no matter where you're calling it from. When I learned about subworkflows is when everything really clicked for me when it came to workflow architecture and workflow design. You have to put some thought into what you want to build and how you want to build it, not just throw nodes in your workflow and see what works. Otherwise, you're going to end up with an unmanageable beast that you're going to look at in 1 month and wonder, why did I do that? Which, to be fair, is part of learning and has happened to me a lot of times. But I've learned from it, and now I know to use these modular sub-workflows that I can reuse and that I know are reliable. So let's recap. Sub-workflows extend the capabilities of AI agents. They also prevent your n8n instance from crashing from processing too much data, and they allow you to create reusable components that you can call from multiple other workflows. Try implementing a sub-workflow in your next n8n project. If it doesn't fit, if there's no loops, if there's no use for it, that's okay. You don't need to force a functionality into your workflow. But I want you to think about, where might this fit in your next workflow or in a workflow that you've recently done, and give it a try at implementing it, and you'll see how much smoother things go. Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear about anything you're struggling with the n8n, so maybe I can make a video about that to help you, and maybe others will learn from that as well. For that, please hit subscribe. It really helps us with getting these videos out to more people and helping more people. So thank you so much for watching, and remember to never stop prompting.